This snail scours a glass wall, empty of flavor. It will soon get used to this new environment, but for the time being, it must wait until algae grows. You wonder how this snail adapts to living in this new environment, where it mouths the glass for a trace of food, so unlike its wild cousins, who feast on a banquet of rotting plants and floating debris in ponds where snails should live. This aquarium with its glass wall is so alien and foreign to the snail's natural way of living. And if it doesn't die in its attempt to adapt to this new environment, if it gets accustomed to it, can it ever be put back into a pond? We all live in our aquariums, don't we? In my aquarium in Minnesota, I wake up with my routine. But within walking distance, many others live in a completely different kind of aquarium, more like a gymnasium, where they sleep and eat with no private space. They live lives that hardly resemble my own, and it bothers me. Why are they living like that in a country that boasts opportunity and wealth? So I started a nonprofit. It provided a method to give folks a way to make some money and to have some purpose for the day. In that process, I got to know street survivors and I was given a dare. If I really wanted to know what their lives were like, sleep at a homeless shelter, eat at soup kitchens, go through the day just like they do. I agreed, but I was terrified. What would it be like? Would I get beat up? Or, as my wife said to me, pick up body lice? It took me almost 6 months to get up the guts to do it, and I got some counseling.
My first day in a temporary shelter, I was petrified. I was scared stiff. Grew up in a pretty sheltered, non-black neighborhood. I had black neighbors, but I'd really never seen that many in one place at one time, all looking pretty desolate, all looking pretty scary, actually, to me.
I mean, the first night I ever spent at Dorothy Day, I lost my shoes. If you're carrying a bag or personal belongings, you take your shoes, you tie them to your bag, you put the bag up under your head, or, you got to strap it to you.
You definitely need to look out for those that actually have a mentality, a street savvy mentality as you, because everyone's trying to get over. Everybody's looking for the bigger piece, You got to look out for thieves. You got to look out for those that's running game. You have to look out for those that's trying to befriend you. You have to just stay on guard,
I went down there to meet a buddy of mine because he just moved back from Fargo. And he had a bag. I let him borrow a bag to carry his stuff, down there. And he left some stuff here until he could get a locker. So I took it down there. And I'm walking in the dining room, and this guy's walking, and he's got a white bag like this. And there's really only room for 2 people to walk anyway. And he hits my leg, right? And he pushes me, and he says, "Can't you say excuse me?" I said, "Dude, you're the one that hit my leg." The staff came and told me I had to leave because I wasn't a client there. That's what you got to put up with down there. And people don't want to. Why do I have to put up with that?
The advice didn't scare me. I was raised in Flint, Michigan, the epicenter for crime and homicide. Still, I took advice for how I should present myself on my first night.
You need to look out for, well, for starters, what you keep in your wallet, or even bringing a wallet, or money, or cash, or anything that has value. I would, if you're going to play the homeless role for a day, you leave those things at home. I'd even go so far as to say, leave your cell phone home. Backpack would be good. Old backpack, used backpack. Can't walk in there clean shaven and clean clothes and clean backpack and nice brand new tennis shoes because no one's going to believe you. So you need to walk in looking like a little bit haggard. So I would say give yourself a 2 or 3 day start on your beard.
During the time I waited, I really started to wonder about the number of unsheltered people in the United States and in Minnesota. I looked it up later on. Statistics say that there are an estimated 500,000 people unsheltered nationwide on any one night, more than in the entire city of Atlanta. In Minnesota, the estimates indicate over 9,000. Of these persons without shelter, I'm witnessing just those in one overnight shelter. I'm not seeing those who are couch hoppers, those who sleep in vehicles, those who camp, those under 24 years old, women, and women with children. Women with children and youth comprise half the homeless. And then, even though blacks comprise 5% of the Minnesota population, almost 40% of unsheltered people are black. One thing was certain on this frostbit January night: nobody was smiling, except for a guy smoking crack who thought I was an undercover cop. How did they get here? What could happen in a person's life to get them in this lobby, in this God-forsaken place?
When I was a kid, I kept running away from home because my dad had beat me. I kept running back to my mom. My mom would bring me right back. And if I told anybody what he did when I came back, it was even worse. So pretty soon I was telling them, they'd ask me, what's the problem? And I go, I was afraid to tell anybody. And then I was afraid to even run back to my mom because she was just bringing me right back. And I, as a child, I don't understand all this. So eventually they put me in the nut house and did an EEG, found out that there was nothing wrong with me, mentally, but I would still do this because every time I'd say something bad about someone, I'd get in trouble. So pretty soon I just didn't want to talk to anybody. And so I kept being shuffled to foster homes, and I didn't want to stay because they kept putting me around my hometown. And I just kept going back to my mom.
Well, I grew up with 8 sisters and 2 brothers. We grew up in a South Minneapolis residence. We grew up with just a single parent. My mother was my mother and my father. There was a lot of hard discipline. Throughout childhood, I was kind of like a troublemaker. I was always into something or other.
Well, I had a pretty nice upbringing. I was raised with both my parents. My father, he had basically left the coop at the age of 13 is when things kind of started spiraling out of control. My grades started falling, and I started running around with gangs, and things just basically got out of hand a little bit. I started seeing a lot of people making a lot of fast money, so I had got into the drug business. Started selling crack cocaine at the age of 14, I believe. So I brought it upon myself to start making money, enough money to which, my mother didn't have to come out of her pockets or anything for any, so. Well, at the age of 15 is when everything basically really hit the fan.
I come to find out, my mom was just an alcoholic. And because she was an alcoholic, and I'd get in trouble whenever I, left the house and go out and party or whatever. So my mom told all my aunts, she was the oldest of 8 kids, and I had aunts that were almost, my older sister's age. And she told all them, hey, buy whatever Kurt wants at the liquor store as long as he stays home. So I became the party guy for all my friends. They get their allowance. They want some booze. So I stayed drunk all through high school. And I couldn't get out of it. And I kept getting in trouble.
I was sitting on a corner one day speaking with a young lady friend of mine, and out of the blue, out of nowhere, here come a lot of police cars and squad cars and helicopters and things of that nature. and they said, get on the ground, basically. They said there was a serious crime that was committed, and I fit the description of a suspect that had committed this heinous crime, which was a guy got murdered in front of a liquor store. So at 15, this was a big shocker to me. They brought me past the scene in which this guy was slumped over in a vehicle. They said, that's exactly what you just did. I said to myself, come on, I know this is a joke. But after about the first night, I kind of realized that these police officers, they weren't playing no games. So I got certified as an adult. So now I go from juvenile to adult court, in which they're still saying that you killed this person. My mother got involved with the NAACP. The NAACP had put a reward out for any information leading to the real killer, you know, and there was a witness or a couple witnesses that actually witnessed the crime. And they said, well, you guys got the wrong person. You guys had the wrong person. I get released. I start drinking a lot. I really just didn't know. I made myself grow up fast because I was incarcerated with nothing but older guys. And, you know, there's guys that know my father in there, you know, so they pretty much had my back. There was no incidents in which, you know, guys kind of, you know, looked at me as being a child or anything in there or nothing like that. No rape and none of that going on. So
in 9th grade, 10th grade, I worked as a bag boy, and I worked in the warehouse for Sears. And then I got into a little more trouble, went to jail a few times, got out of that. From there, I worked in different restaurants throughout South Minneapolis. And then around, I don't know, the age 21 when my mother passed away, that's when I just kind of like left Minnesota.
And I wound up going to Colorado, wound up getting drunk, did a burglary there. I was facing 5 to 40 years, so I pled guilty to 0 to 15 years. And that's how I became institutionalized. And then I couldn't do probation and parole. I kept just, you know, And then because I was out on probation and parole, I couldn't work. So I just had to go back to the criminal element until they caught me. And it just was a vicious cycle until I grew up. It took me until I was 35 years old. I said, this is it, Kurt. And I haven't been in prison since 1991.
I lived in Florida. I worked at the Orlando Magic's Coliseum, and worked as a longshoreman for a little bit. Got tired of Florida, moved to Tennessee for a while. I worked down there as just a general laborer on the river. That only, well, you're talking about some stinky work there, but I cleaned out barges.
Drinking got real heavy with me. I got into the weed, got to smoking weed, got to drinking real heavy, drinking vodka, all of that, you know, and I kind of found out that was the thing to do. That was cool. I mean, you was accepted when you did that, you know, but I was doing it to kind of, you know, ease the pain that I had just went through too. And not only that, the fact that my father wasn't in my life like he was so it kind of ran hand in hand. You know, I was kind of numbing the pain with the alcohol and drugs. So
Started U.S. Bank just before the year 2000 as a contractor. They hired me when the contract expired 6 months later. They hired me, gave me an $80,000 salary with a $10,000 signing bonus, 3 weeks of vacation, full benefits. So it's pretty hard to say no to that. Great place to work, great people to work for. Had a verbal disagreement with one of the employees in human relations, which resulted in some disciplinary measures on U.S. Bank's part that weren't reconcilable for me, and we ended up signing a termination agreement.
And then from there I drifted, I don't know, I think it was Texas then. I worked down there on and off as a longshoreman, and then I worked off the oil rig for a while. And then that's when I discovered I really didn't really didn't want to be there because I didn't know how to swim.
What happened was I went out to my mom's. She was dying. She died in 95. I went out there in 94. And out in Oregon, every can and bottle is a nickel. So for 11 years, that's all I did, ride around on a bicycle and collect cans and bottles. And did meth. And the problem thing was, I needed the meth in order to dumpster dive, because you can't do it during the day. Everybody chases you out, So you have to do it at night. So I needed the meth in order to make my money, and I needed to make the money in order to buy the meth. So it was a vicious cycle.
A few years go by, I catch my first drug case, go to prison, do my year. While I'm in prison, I actually meet my second kid's mother. I get out of prison, I was drinking and smoking pot still, and I realized to this day that me drinking and mixing it with pot definitely we're not friends at all.
And then from there, I drifted to Colorado, worked as a general laborer. I guess I wanted to see what America was like. And then from there, I went to Seattle, Washington, where I worked in a fishery for about 6 years. And I got tired of that. Then I drifted to Salt Lake City.
6 weeks after being unemployed and still not working yet, of course, my wife and I had a difficult week. A lot of things took place, but foremost among those was having a fairly drawn-out argument about money. And about a week after that discussion, I moved out. 6 months after that, 6 months after moving out, I was homeless. Basically, as soon as my unemployment ran out. No one ever thinks they're going homeless, so when you have money in your pocket, you got a place to live. You figure you have a place to live. I had a $60,000, $70,000 in a 401k. I had a severance package from U.S. Bank. It was 3 months worth of salary. So I was sitting on $60-some thousand, and one never thinks they're going homeless. We accumulated some bills in the marriage, and I actually paid off most of those bills with that, which was really stupid. I don't recommend that. Looking back, if I'd have known after 6 months after paying out those bills, I wasn't going to have a dime to my name, I obviously wouldn't have paid off those bills.
Finally, my daughter gets a hold of me and pulls me out of there and brings me here. And that was in 2005. When
that job ended, I drifted to Reno, I think, for about maybe a year and a half. And I worked there as a painter assistant. And from there, I drifted back to Tennessee, worked for a real estate agent refurbishing houses.
Found myself on the streets of Faribault with no place to call. Did have a car. I had a 99 Bonneville. Toyed with the idea of sleeping in that, and that's not too bad. That time of year, of course. Was actually kind of giddy about being homeless, and this isn't so hard. I told my wife that at the time, my ex-wife, that this wasn't going to be any problem whatsoever. That was wrong. Obviously, it was a very big problem.
And then after that, I think I was about, 36 then. Then I drifted to Vegas. I stayed there for about 10 years, on and off, living from hotel to hotel. Got tired of that life, and then I drifted to Sioux Falls. I lived there for about 7 years.
I was with her for all the way up until the last 2 years. I was kind of, it was special with her, So keep in mind, at this time, I never really actually got myself on track. I was always in and out of women's lives and this and that and the other. So this particular day, I was drinking real heavy. And she was at work. She got back home and she just was like, look, after 13 years, if this is all you can continue doing is just drinking, then maybe, me and you need to go ahead and go our separate ways. But by this time, we have 2 children together. I'm not taking her serious because it's been 13 long years, you know, so we got into it. She threw an ashtray, hit me and knocked my teeth out my mouth. I didn't know what to do, you know, I kind of just, it just flashed. I just tasted a lot of salt in my mouth and it was like, I can't believe you actually knocked my teeth out. And it didn't even take that long before I snapped. And I put hands on her, and I'm not proud to say that I put hands on her or nothing like that. I feel terrible about the situation at hand. My daughter was in the other room, you know, and I do not, you know, I went to anger management. I done been through classes, and you know, I done prayed, and you know, and to this day, it was almost like, you know, I wish it never had happened. I wish, you know, that a part of me had some type of compassion of what she felt, but I didn't never have no compassion. There was never nothing brought to my attention with the compassion issue, or you know, learning how to accept, you know, feedback when a person that really cares about you, you know. So I never got that type of attention in my life. So it was, and after that, I went to jail, got out, I served my time, I became homeless.
Then I got a message that was sent to me that one of my sisters was dying, and I came back here. It was all a hoax. And from there, you know, trying to be with family, I discovered that it was nothing but they was just using me. So I wound up in the streets around 2001.
After hearing from men about how they became homeless, I wondered how consistent their stories were with others who end up homeless. After some research and after hearing more stories, I found out that there are as many stories as there are people. Sure, some common ground can be identified, like mental illness, high school education level, lack of rooming houses, and so on. But doesn't everyone have some relation or friend who'd take them in? Let them stay on a couch?
I think people become homeless because they don't have any support behind them. And their families no longer want them. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. That was true with my family. 2 brothers, 3 sisters, 3 sons, a daughter, and a mother. And the word homelessness was like a plague. They thought I might as well have had leprosy. They didn't want to be anywhere near me. So to me, it's all about relationship.
All of these people that claim that they love me, where are they at now? You know, I really need them.
To be generous, I suspect friends and family want their privacy and have enough troubles of their own. But maybe there are some people who don't want anything to do with family and friends, who just want to leave the hustle and bustle of life, who choose to be homeless.
You hear about people losing their jobs, you know, being so many paychecks away from, you know, losing their house, you know, whatever. No one chooses that, you know. No one that I know want to lose their house and, all their possessions and their family. Yeah, never know. It's like it can happen. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to everybody.
So once you're without shelter and you didn't choose it, you'd think a person would do anything to get out, to not be homeless, even if they don't have family or friends who'll take them in. Yet statistics show many homeless are trapped in a system. They are chronically homeless, especially when it comes to single males. Why? Does something life-changing happen to a person who becomes homeless, even if it's only for a week, a month?
This is the future.
Or been forgotten about.
When I was young, I dreamed of big houses. When I was young, I dreamed of big houses.
Too much info. Look it.
That was my night at the shelter. Actually, the lights never went off, they were dimmed. And staff stayed up all night long at the desk, which gave me a sense of safety. And people took showers all through the night in the bathroom without a door, which kept me awake. So now I've had my first taste of what happens when you're homeless and sleep deprived. But in another shelter, it can be even worse. People sleep on thin mattresses on the floor.
I have this thing about people laying or being around me too close. But then, when it started getting overcrowded, when you got people that are like 9 inches apart, it just doesn't work. I had to end up leaving there because a guy rolled over and I thought he was trying to spoon with me or something other. So that's when I decided, you know what, I can survive better outside than I can inside.
I guess I didn't have it so bad overnight. Whatever the case, I had hardly begun the experience of being homeless.
No, it wasn't easy. I mean, it was like, it took me a long time to figure out, from being in weird, living in different environments, it was like when I waited out and then I started following people to find out where they was going because I seen them on a daily basis. And then that's when I finally got into the habit of, I can go here, I can go there. I got to keep a few dollars in my pocket. I'm not going to walk all day long. I had to learn, what areas, where I could go and not be bothered or harassed, because of the situation I was in. Those things you had to figure out on your own. You find yourself reading a lot of newspapers, a lot of books. I tried not to really fit that description, but when you're lugging a backpack around in a gym bag, that's kind of hard to do.
I really couldn't see myself because with the image that I always thought that, cool people they don't go backwards, cool people stay ahead, cool people are always on top. I kind of put a facade on as though I wasn't, because of the longevity image that I actually had. So a lot of people didn't actually know that I was homeless because I would actually be out or I would be seen. A lot of people would see me, and I always kept the image up. As long as I actually have a haircut and nice clothes, then won't nobody ever believe that I'm homeless. I could kind of blend into the cool world.
Adapting to homelessness comes quite naturally. Obviously, you're scared. You just went through a pretty traumatic experience. Adapting is something that actually the body does very well. It's the mind. It's the mind that doesn't adapt well. You'll adapt to sleeping on the floor. You'll adapt to eating high fat content foods. You'll get used to drinking bad coffee. You'll get used to walking. If you haven't walked before, you'll get used to walking. You'll get used to carrying a backpack. It's incredible, really, the human body. It's quite remarkable. But once again, the body will adapt. The mind is quite another story, however. The mind kind of goes the other direction, if you will. It doesn't adapt very well. It says, wait a minute, I want my old lifestyle back. I don't want to get used to any of this, and then there's the mind-body struggle that goes along with that. And actually, that ends up driving a lot of people crazy.
I have to say it. I'm already losing the sense that I belong in the other world, the world I'm used to. I'm feeling odd, but I suspect over time I'd be feeling other things.
You feel lonely. You feel worthless. You feel like unloved, rejected. All the usual terms you hear with the homeless. Those aren't just statements. Those are facts. Those people don't feel loved. They don't feel respected. They don't feel wanted. They don't feel needed or loved in any way, shape, or form. And to feel that way for any period of time is going to drive anybody into the depths of depression very quickly. Very, very quickly. I have a God who's always walking with me, but it sure didn't seem like it there, I'll tell you.
I'm too God-fearing, to ever think there's no hope. It's almost like, it's crossed my mind to commit suicide, not committed, but just to get out of this world, right? But I'm too God-fearing. There's no way I'd kill myself.
I went to another place where street survivors can hang out and where some social services are available. It was as noisy and crowded as at the shelter. I felt like I wanted to be left alone, unlike Kenneth, who felt another way.
I was very hopeless. I was in a real dark stage, and I would use everything in my advantage to actually try to get someone to understand, get someone to listen, because it's kind of hard kind of opening up to, somebody that you actually don't know.
I decided I should see exactly how hopeless I should be. I went to a place a bit difficult to locate on a map and outside the downtown area. I talked with a lady behind the desk. After introducing myself, I asked how long it would be before I could get into transitional housing. She asked me where I stayed, and I told her. She said I should work with their housing person, and she said the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Oh, you don't know? Who should I talk to? Okay, you don't know? Who should I talk to?
But that didn't answer my question. I still wanted to know how long I should expect to get transitional housing, a roof over my head.
I've heard that in the Twin Cities there's transitional housing available for everyone.
Not everyone. Transitional housing fills up, and because it's usually 2 years.
Wait a second. What did she say?
Transitional housing fills up, and because it's usually 2 years.
2 years? 2 years of this? If nothing else, I definitely needed to find out how I can get money now.
Do you receive cash assistance right now?
No.
I was going to say you may qualify because unless you have any other income, if you're a veteran or anything, then most time when you're over 55, you qualify for 203 a month.
What is it called?
It's general assistance.
Okay.
And you qualify $200 a month.
$200 a month?
Yes, sir. And you would just have to go back to the county office and apply.
Oddly enough, the homeless have money. Some panhandle, some steal, obviously. Some have disability. Some are on what's called government assistance, or GA. So it gives them a little bit of money to spend. None of that money, of course, goes towards actually getting themselves out of homelessness. Goes mostly towards meeting daily needs. I think it's meant to do things like hygiene and groceries and those types of things that you may not have money to spend, money for. Now, there are many people who qualify for GA government assistance by having a disability. And depression in Minnesota is considered a disability, as are many other things. But it's not hard to get government assistance, and that government assistance automatically allows you $203 every month. So there's a source of income there, and others are making much more. Others get Social Security benefits, so they often have $500 to $600 in their pocket at any given time. And that money does get spent badly. Those with money will spend it on a hotel room for a week. Those with less money will take the 5-6 block walk down to the local liquor store and buy themselves a pint or more. Or no shortage of drug dealers on the street, especially in the community. Plenty of potential to make bad decisions. Plenty of potential to spend your money in all the wrong places. Sex, money, drugs, alcohol, it's all available. You wouldn't think that, but I think people lose sight of that. We're people who are down and out and perhaps have lost a lot in life and made some bad decisions in life.
Sometimes you have money, but see, for me, no, don't work. I get frustrated. I can't make a bill, and pretty soon I just don't pay any bills. You know what I mean? For me, that's me. And I know it's a mental thing, but I don't know how to overcome it.
So I can get general assistance at $203 and food stamps. Maybe even try to get something from Social Security because I'm 60 and out of work. But even though Daniel says some homeless have money, $203 a month doesn't sound like money. and $600 on top of that is probably well spent on a motel anyway. At least a person can have time to themselves, a private shower, and some dignity. But it's enough to keep people in the homeless system with its attendant opportunities for drugs, sex, and alcohol. And if Kurt has a problem paying bills, I suspect it's likely because he gets exactly $98 a month in spending money. But maybe there's money to be made another way. Maybe I should panhandle. The whole panhandling thing is a touchy subject. Some take advantage of it. Others simply need food for a day, by one estimate, what is needed by 94%. Statistics show that the take from panhandling averages at $25, which means half the time you get less than that.
Well, if you don't like what people are doing, ignore it. You don't have to talk about it or be derogatory towards these people. Well, what do you know about that person? Nothing. You know, you lump us all together in a group and say, well, they're going to spend it on drugs or alcohol. How do you know that? How do you know he ain't got starving kids at home? He needs diapers. How do you know he's not trying to get a room for the night? You don't know nothing because you don't talk to anybody. You just look with disdain and form your own opinion. And it pisses me off. It really does. If you don't like it, shut the f*** up. Ignore it. You don't have to give them any money. You know, the only way you could bitch about it is if you gave somebody some money and you seen them go to the liquor store. But if you haven't given them no money, what do you care?
So, not for me. Yet, I still didn't know how it is you couldn't find some kind of work.
Actually, finding a job and dealing with the situation at hand, being homeless, it didn't seem like that would work out. Being homeless, not having nowhere to go after you work, it just didn't make any sense to me, you know, to work and then you're homeless at the same token. Now, if I had an actual roof, I would have worked, you know, because it would have went hand in hand. But being homeless and working kind of doesn't seem like it goes together. Right now, at this time, I'm trying to get my mental illness in more control, you know, before I actually step into the job world, because I never had a job before.
And that's been a struggle right there, because if I go to work, then I jeopardize my Social Security, because they feel like, why are they gonna give me Social Security if I can go to work? Even if I did go to work, they wanna still govern that money and still give me the same allowance. So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm 58, and who wants to hire an old person?
I couldn't find IT work. Ended up taking a job at a manufacturing outfit, being an electrician, a journeyman electrician, which I knew nothing about, but they brought me in virtually sight unseen and put me to work. Had almost 4 months of full 40-hour full-time job at $15 or $16 an hour, so I had good money. I'm now making $2,000 a month cash. I had that sitting, and they laid me off. It wasn't totally unexpected. Now I'm out of job, and that was wreaking all kinds of havoc with my sleep, with my eating. I was losing weight again, and I was depressed. And none of those scenarios was any good. And you put them all three together, and you got a pretty bad picture. So I started on a 3-month downward spiral. That ended me up in the mental health ward at St. Joseph's for 72 hours. They put me on a 72-hour mental hold. Obviously emotionally unstable and crying and angry and bitter, and it was just a mess. And I think this is typical. I think that's this part of the story isn't atypical. It's what happens to a lot of people. It's not a one-time loss. It's not a one-time homelessness thing. It's you get yourself stable, you get a room, you get a job, you lose a job, you lose your home. I mean, and it's that repeating cycle of in and out of work, in and out of your own apartment, in and out of stability, you know. and your life is just a series of those kinds of things.
Actually, in a position where I was actually working for a guy a few hours a day, and then when I would come back to wherever my things was at, I actually went to prison because I caught somebody stealing my stuff. And I ended up beating the crap out of him. I went to prison. And going to prison for simply defending what's yours and you're black, it's hard. It took months of me being in prison for them to say, well, okay, you didn't have to come here. Why would they sentence you to all of this time when your assault charge only carried 15 months? So now, at that point in time, it was like, okay, you're in your early 40s and you finally got a felony just for protecting what was mine.
Seems like the job thing is more complicated than one would think. No one said as much, but it is near impossible to jump from government assistance to at least the $15 an hour necessary to live in an apartment as of 2019 in Minneapolis, where low-cost rent is $1,450 a month. But I thought I'd try to get a job myself rather than just take their word for it. I didn't have to imagine very hard to figure out how I could become homeless, and I told the 20-something woman who is here to help me a little about my situation. I tell her that I worked in science, lost my job, but have only a BA degree in journalism, and so I can't get a job anymore in science because I don't have the right degree, even though I've worked in science for 24 years. She recommended networking to get back in science, something I had no confidence about. She let me know that I can use their computers to search for a job, and I could get a locker to store my things for free for the first month. Unless I lucked into a science job, my more likely hope was a job at about $11 an hour, which means I'd still be homeless. Without an address to call home, with a potential police record, with just needing to pay attention to survival, getting a job with enough pay is nearly out of the question. I feel this awful weight in my gut like, what's the point? Yet isn't there always someone who defies the odds, who rises from the gutter to make something of themselves? And isn't that what you'd like to see in a documentary versus a depressing look at homelessness? Just as I was hoping for this, Daniel found an opportunity.
I interviewed for a job yesterday and was accepted. So the future's looking a whole lot brighter for me. And my next step will be my own apartment, my own place, my own bed, my own kitchen, and a full restoration to dignity. I'm not healed. No, I'm not going to tell you that I'm fixed now that I have a job and I have an outlook. I have a future to look forward to. Hope is a must. You have to have hope or you won't move. So the hope is what's going to move me forward. But I'm not by any means fixed. These are tears of pain and joy all at the same time.
I wanted to end the documentary here. I so wanted to end it here. The success story we all want to see, and the movie ending when the door closes. But it didn't quite turn out. Daniel lasted about 6 weeks. Disappointed, I abandoned working on the documentary. I was so depressed. Yet, over time, I sorted through my expectations. As a scientist, I'm familiar with the bell curve as a way to describe events. In populations, generally you have most people or animals operating along an average, or the bell part of the curve. But there are always those on the edges, what are called the outliers. For street survivors, there are those who escape homelessness early on, the outliers on the left. In the middle are the typical homeless who become chronic. At the other end are those who are so resilient they escape chronic homelessness through grit and determination. In our culture, we expect everyone to have grit and determination, and I'm as guilty as the next person. I wanted the one success story. But how do people from so many different walks of life end up in the same revolving door in the first place? How does homelessness become inescapable for so many single men?
You know, I get misunderstood all the time because I'm institutionalized. You know, I had to act like this and be like this because of prison. It's the only way to survive. And I couldn't turn it off and on when I come out of prison and become it just didn't work. It was confusing and hard.
I don't know if it's low self-esteem, maybe with the combination of drugs and they just got comfortable with being in that cycle.
I don't know anybody who's been homeless for a week or a day or a month even. The homeless people that I know have been homeless, many of them, for years on end. I think once you're homeless and have been homeless for a while, it's almost becomes part of your DNA.
DNA? Daniel had hit the nail on the head, and I didn't hear it when I first started the documentary. It wasn't until I learned about a field of science called behavioral epigenetics that I began to understand chronic homelessness. It turns out that genes can be activated or inactivated, turned on or off, depending on the influence of the environment. So the environment you live in can actually cause changes in your DNA and then in your behavior. While no studies have been done as of the making of this film on the homeless population, studies looking at epigenetic effects of trauma have been done. And the research conclusively points to significant behavioral changes among populations who have been traumatized, no matter what their race, level of education, or level of wealth. And just like any bell curve, the average are traumatized, with outliers traumatized more or less, or not at all. And what could be more traumatizing than being put out on the streets with no place to call home for at least 2 years? I'm sure it would happen to me. But there are other human-altering events besides epigenetics. It's no accident that a snail started this documentary. A kind of snail called Helosoma helped spawn research that proved brain cells look for different connections when adapting to new environments, what scientists call brain plasticity. So not only is it probable that epigenetic changes occur, but also that the hard wiring of the brain changes as well. Those traumatized and in survival mode are simply not the same people they once were. So I don't think anymore that I can take an animal like a snail, or a human for that matter, pull it out of its environment, and then try to put it back again. Isn't it about time that we shelter the homeless before throwing them into impossible environments? We need to make absolutely certain that no one has to go without shelter. But let's not, in this process, forget to talk to the survivors themselves.
To where I was, to where I went, and to where I'm heading back to. I wouldn't want anybody to experience what I experienced. Nobody. Just nobody. I don't hate anybody enough to have them go through this.
I think the biggest thing is that you have to give the homeless people back their dignity. Ask them their opinion. Make them inclusive. That's it.
Teenagers too, there's children by us, 2 generations.